Kelley Ford, thelines.com, also on X at KFord Ratings, KFordRatings.com on your radio, Tuesdays, 4:30 to 5 o'clock. Kelley, welcome in, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jake. How are you today?
We are good. We're just chalking through everything as, we move through Tuesday. I noticed you're putting out a lot of stuff on college basketball. I do want to touch on that before we get out of here. First, let's go with the NFL. Your thoughts on what you saw this past weekend, and, were you surprised by any of the outcomes?
I would say, Jake, one, it was a good weekend of NFL football. Good games, compelling, exciting, lots of good play, some big-time mistakes, too, both by players and coaching staffs, as I'm sure we can talk about. But I was surprised that Kansas City won. And people can say, well, you shouldn't have been surprised, Kelley. They got Pat Mahomes. He's one of the best quarterbacks to ever do it, maybe the best to ever do it. I'm not in that camp yet. I think that Tom Brady's resume still speaks for itself. And, again, I'm a Colts fan, so I did not like the New England Patriots during the Peyton Manning era and Tom Brady in that rivalry. But what Tom Brady accomplished, I think, is stands above everything. But Patrick Mahomes is certainly on a path to being in that conversation. And so you bet against him, you pick against him at your own peril. I really thought Baltimore was a better team. I still think, actually, Baltimore is a better team than Kansas City. On that day, Kansas City was the better team, and that's what matters. That defense, though, Kansas City, they're doing it different than they have this last 5-6 years. The defense now is among the best in the entire NFL. The offense with Patrick Mahomes is going to be what it is. So that result was surprising to me a little bit. I know it was a close projected game, and we got that. But I did think that Baltimore would win that game. And on the NFC side, I did think San Francisco would win. I didn't think that the game would play out the way that it did. I was surprised that Detroit jumped all over San Francisco in the first half and even held a pretty commanding lead at halftime. I did not see the game playing out that way, but I did think San Francisco would win, and ultimately they did come back and get it done. So I think, of the four teams that were left, Detroit, by the numbers and things that I'm looking at, they were the weakest team. And so I wouldn't have been surprised at all if San Francisco, Kansas City, Baltimore, some combination of that made the Super Bowl. And that's what we have here. So I think it's going to be a great game. It's exciting. But, yeah, it was a fun weekend, the conference championship game weekend in the NFL.
Kelley Ford on your radio, Tuesday edition of the program, thelines.com, also KFord Ratings on X and KFordRatings.com. Which one of these teams that are eliminated, the Lions or the Ravens, and a lot's got to happen with coaches and obviously the NFL draft, free agency and stuff, do you think has the longer staying power for next year and maybe the year after of those two?
Yeah, I think it's Baltimore between those two. And the answer for me is as simple as Lamar Jackson. And I know people are disappointed, and I'm sure he is, with, how the season ended here for them. But there's a handful of quarterbacks in the NFL that are just different. They are the difference makers. They find ways to win games. They carry teams on their back. And Lamar Jackson, it's not all him. That Baltimore defense is really, really good. And they've got some great continuity within that organization from the ownership all the way down. So it's not just Lamar Jackson, but between the two, Detroit, they are a team that's on the rise. If I'm not mistaken, I think they've got some things they need to work out with some potential free agents and maybe backfilling some needs that might come up here this offseason. But between the two, to me, the answer is the Ravens because of Lamar Jackson. I think that the future is bright with him, and they will at some point get over this hump. I feel confident. He's that good of a player. He's that transcendent of a player that I'll be surprised if he ends his career having never made and maybe even won a Super Bowl.
Let me ask you this, NFL-wise. When you look at teams like Buffalo and, just 10,000-foot flyover of what has happened in the league, Buffalo, Miami, you look at Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, you look at the strides that Houston made. You can go across. Like Jim Harbaugh now comes into the AFC in San Diego. For the Chargers, rather. I always refer to them as San Diego, probably always will, for the Chargers.
Yep.
You go to the NFC. I mean, the Packers made strides, looked really good in the postseason. The Cowboys are kind of what they are. We'll see. Philadelphia's going through a transition. Is it safe to say that the AFC looks like it is positioning itself, and we go back and forth with this, to be the stronger of the two leagues?
Yeah, and Jake, I think that was the narrative coming into the 2023 season as well, and I don't think it's changed. The AFC, and it starts at the quarterback position. I mean, because of the quarterbacks, and you mentioned a lot of them there, because of the quarterbacks that are playing on AFC rosters, by and large, on average, that's going to be the stronger of the two conferences. So, as a fan of the Indianapolis Colts, what do we have in Anthony Richardson? Because for us to be competitive and for us to make runs in the playoffs, we've got to get great play at the quarterback position. I imagine a lot of your listeners are New Orleans Saints fans, and so I'd rather be a Saints fan from a perspective of your conference difficulty than a Colts fan, because I do think the NFC is more gettable right now, if you will. I know the Saints have all sorts of cap things they're working on, and folks aren't happy with, by and large, the product that's been on the field or the win-loss record. But as my what-if standings show, New Orleans was not that far away from being, an above 500 team, maybe even a playoff team this year if some bounces go their way and they get some breaks in different games. So the AFC, to answer your question, I believe is shaping up to be the more difficult of the two conferences, and it ebbs and flows. It's just where we are right now with the quarterbacks that are in the league.